So here we are in this mandala of Sangha, our community. We're in this human life, and yet at the same time, we're alongside in the presence of the Transcendental. On the shrine since November, and today, hopefully, you recognize that we also have the Buddha Shakyamuni, and he rediscovered the Dharma to save all beings. And the reason why we're able to be with these figures, Vajrapani, Avalokitesvara, and Manjusri, is because of the Buddha's, after the Buddha's parinirvana, after his death, the early Sangha found creative ways to practice and explore and develop connection with the Buddha's qualities. And we are all part of that lineage. And it's our responsibility that our lives are imbued with these Buddhist qualities and Buddhist practice. Aspirations exemplify energy in pursuit of the good, compassion, and wisdom. And what we learn here needs to be expressed through our actions, our body, speech, and mind. And as you've been dedicating 2.5 hours or so over the last few weeks, maybe you can be kind to yourself over the next ongoing period, yourself this time, this space. Maybe rewatch the recordings, start conversation, have the Sangha witness, and talk about your experience with these qualities. He who is fearless. So yeah, I always notice that when I say his name, I just smile. Lovely connection. So he's been working in the Dharma since 2007. He started in the cafe basement. 2009, he joined the centre team. And this year, he's got his 13th order birthday. And then in 2018, he became a Mitra convener. And last year, I know that he also became a private precept. So not only does he support others in the process of going for refuge and training for ordination, but he has been witnessed and supported by the Triratna order. To become a private preceptor, it's not just a rite of passage. He had to be open and go through a rigorous process of being directly witnessed. I imagine a process not for the faint-hearted, but something to be done by somebody who is confident in their depth, open and fearless. It means that he gets to know with a lot of people in Manchester. So yes, please give him a very warm welcome. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Louise, for that warm welcome. It's lovely to see you all here for the fourth session. Session in the Saturday series, and thanks for coming. And a warm hello if you're watching us on YouTube on our live stream. So yeah, as Louise said, I'm going to explore two things this afternoon. I'm going to explore the Buddha and something called the Bodhicitta, which some of you will be familiar with, but maybe others won't be. And I'm going to use Chitta as what motivates, what moves bodhisattvas, and the three protectors that we've been exploring over these past 3 weeks, Vajrapani, Avalokitesvara, and Manjusri. They're all bodhisattvas. So firstly, what is a bodhisattva, just to remind you all? Describes a bodhisattva as one who is dedicated alone, but so that they may lead all living beings to the same state of enlightenment. So that's the spirit of the Bodhicitta, helping others, the spirit of to others, to help them awaken, to help them become enlightened. So it's that spirit that moves, motivates all three protectors as bodhisattvas. And the word bodhicitta could be as bodhisattvas. And the word bodhicitta could be translated as the truth of things. And chitta means something like mind, consciousness, even heart. So it means something like awakening heart, mind. Sangharakshita translates bodhicitta in a particular way. He says it's the arising of the will to enlightenment. In a book called The Bodhisattva Ideal, Sangharakshita describes how the bodhicitta represents the manifestation, even the eruption within us of something transcendental. The emergence within our own ordinary experience of something of a totally different nature. So the bodhicitta erupts, it manifests. It's as if it comes from beyond us. It's not something we do. We can cultivate it through our practice, through putting ourselves in the right conditions, but it arises, manifests, erupts as if a stream of spiritual energy from beyond takes hold of us. Sangharakshita also said that the bodhicitta is most likely to arise when people come together who deeply share a common vision and purpose for the sevenfold puja that we're going to do. It's not an add-on to what I'm doing. But also, please stay, because I don't want it just to be me that does the puja. But in some respects, doing the puja is going to be the most important thing that we do today. It'll help us to cultivate bodhicitta between us. And it's therefore important that as many of us are there as possible to do that. So I'll say more about that when we come to doing the puja. So yes, this is the final session in this series looking at the three protectors. I think it's been a great series. I've really enjoyed it. I've been really glad that we've been looking at these figures. I hope it's the start of a much deeper exploration for us as a Sangha, through more talks, more discussion, more ritual, to explore the spiritual qualities of these three figures. And when we were talking about this series, Louise and I were part of the group that was planning this series. One of the things that we felt would be good to look at is like, well, what is the source of these three protectors? Where do they come from? Where do they spring from? And of course, that source is the Buddha Shakyamuni. We wouldn't have any of this, anything from the history of Buddhism as a tradition, or anything we've got here in Manchester as a Buddhist centre, without Shakyamuni. So it's probably true in some way, who knows what the actual history is, but the figures of the three protectors probably arose from deep meditation, from sort of very deep meditative practitioners who were meditating on the qualities of the Buddha. And over time, those qualities just started to take on these sort of imaginative archetypal forms. So these archetypal forms like Vajrapani, Avalokitesvara, Manjusri. And in his life and teaching, Sangharakshita always emphasized the importance of the Buddha. I've been rereading the first chapter of Sangharakshita's sort of core literary contribution, which is a book called The Survey of Buddhism. I've been studying that with Dee and Stephen, who's works in Hinterland downstairs. And Dee and I are doing that in preparation for going on a retreat. And it's really struck me, rereading that first chapter, that the Buddha is just sort of dotted throughout what Sangharakshita's saying. He keeps referring to the Buddha. He quotes passages from the Pali Canon about the life and the teachings of the Buddha. It's just absolutely central to that text. And in Sangharakshita's later years, he stated this more and more clearly. He stated the central importance of the Buddha more and more clearly. And there were a number of papers that a senior order member called Subhuti wrote from 2009 onwards. And those papers were based on conversations with Sangharakshita. And throughout those papers, again, Sangharakshita just emphasizes the Buddha. So in one of those papers called Revering and Relying Upon the Dharma, Subhuti says, Sangharakshita sees the historical Buddha as the central focus of devotion and believes that we should keep him very much at the center, not allowing other figures to usurp his place if we are to preserve the integrity of the Dharma. All other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have their meaning through him. They are imaginal explorations of the Buddha's inner nature, personifications of his enlightened qualities. All the figures on the Triratna refuge tree achieve their significance through Shakyamuni. So if you turn round and look at the wall on the back, there's an image of the Triratna refuge tree. And you can see, sorry for people on YouTube, you won't be able to see this, but just try and imagine it. You can see how Shakyamuni, how the Buddha, is right at the heart of that image. How the other figures form a mandala around the Buddha. And included on that refuge tree are the three protectors, Avalokitesvara, Vajrapani and Manjusri. And you can see the light glowing from the Buddha, from the presence of the Buddha too. How it lights those other figures. And it's that light that needs to remain central for us. Even if our connections are stronger with other of the Buddha or Bodhisattva figures, our connection might be with one of those other figures rather than with Shakyamuni. But the Buddha's light will be coming through those figures. So personally, I've got a particular connection with the Buddha Amoghasiddhi. At my ordination, I was given a meditation, which is meditating on the figure of Amoghasiddhi, and I've been doing that meditation more or less daily since I was ordained. And one thing I would say is that meditating on Amoghasiddhi has brought me closer to the figure of Shakyamuni. I've contemplated the image of the Buddha more and more, I think, through meditating on Amoghasiddhi. I've been reading the Pali Suttas about the life and the teachings of the Buddha more and more since meditating on Amoghasiddhi. I chant the Amoghasiddhi mantra, but equally I chant the Shakyamuni mantra. I perform devotional ritual to the Buddha. So there's a sense for me that Amoghasiddhi has just drawn me closer to the illuminating aspect of the Buddha's enlightenment, the Buddha's enlightened being. So the three protectors too illuminate that enlightenment experience. They give us a glimpse of the enlightened experience. That's what we've been exploring over these past 3 weeks. So as Louise said, Sthirajyoti started us off by exploring the enlightened energy of Vajrapani, the energy that leads us to cut through delusion and act for the spiritual benefit of others. And then the following week, Lakeshvara spoke of the compassion of Avalokitesvara, how Avalokitesvara's enlightened loving kindness meets the suffering of the world. And then last week, Aryarakshita described the gentle-voiced, enlightened wisdom of Manjusri, giving us the dharmic clarity that we need on the path and the dharmic clarity we need to help others. And again, as Louise said, there's a really big order convention taking place as we speak in India. And two of the speakers that we've had, Sthirajyoti and Lakeshvara, are there at Bodh Gaya in India, the place of the Buddha's enlightenment. Because of course Bodh Gaya is where the Buddha became enlightened. So there's a phenomenal, I think around 700 order members at Bodh Gaya right now as we speak. I don't know what time it is in India, but let's just imagine they're there as we speak. I think there's about 500 members of the Indian wing of the order there, and then probably about 200 or 300 order members from across other parts of the world. And there are 12 order members from our Manchester Sangha who are out there with Sthirajyoti and Lakeshvara. So as they gather at Bodh Gaya, we could imagine them just staring or looking or sitting under the Bodhi tree itself, the seat of the Buddha's enlightenment. We can imagine them paying homage to the Buddha, feeling that sense of devotion that Sangharakshita spoke of in the passage I just read. And maybe as they're gathering under the Bodhi tree, they too are imagining the Buddha sitting beneath that tree. So I just want to invite you to close your eyes if you want to, and just imagine the Buddha meditating under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha meditating, having taken that vow to awaken. So either keep your eyes closed or you can open them. But just imagine the Buddha sitting there, intent on ending his suffering. Sitting there after the journey that he took that had led him to this place. The Buddha's initial seeing of the four sights. How the Buddha was shocked into seeing the existential suffering of life, of existence. How the Buddha saw firstly the existential truth of aging. How he saw how we can't escape getting older. How, if we live long enough, our bodies will get old, they'll get frailer, they'll decay. They won't work as well as they did. And how the Buddha was shocked by seeing the existential truth of sickness, of illness. And how, again, we can't escape that. How the Buddha saw the absolute fragility of having a body that won't only age, but will get sick too. Again, just the inevitability of that. And of course, we may get sick, we may get ill, and we may recover, but for some of us, we'll get ill and we won't be able to be healed. You know, it'll be terminal. And how the Buddha saw the shocking truth of death. How we can't escape that. None of us. We will all die. We don't know when or how, but our deaths are inevitable. So the Buddha saw all these things and it shocked him to his core. And he was so shocked that he needed to find an answer to this existential situation. He needed to understand it, to make sense of it. And he needed to find what was beyond these truths. And then the Buddha saw a fourth sight. He saw the sight of a wandering holy man, and he saw in that figure that there was a way out of this suffering. And he saw that he too could seek the truth. So he set out on the path of awakening, and after some dead ends, some ways of practicing that he eventually saw wouldn't lead him to the truth, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and vowed not to leave that spot until he had awakened to the truth. He sat and sat, and legend has it that whilst he was deep in meditation, he experienced the attack of Mara, trying with all his might to stop the Buddha from becoming enlightened. So firstly, Mara sent his young daughters who tried to seduce the Buddha. But the Buddha remained still and unperturbed. And he saw craving for what it is, how ultimately it only leads to suffering. And then Mara began aiming all sorts of weapons at the Buddha as he continued to sit under the tree. And legend has it that Mara threw swords, arrows, stones, axes, lightning bolts, even uprooted trees and boulders at the Buddha. And again, the Buddha remained completely still, completely fearless. Miraculously, the weapons all turned to flowers, and the flowers fell, hanging off the trees and covering the ground. And the Buddha saw that fighting back, hardening into retaliation, was just of no use. It only leads to more suffering. So in anger, Mara asked the Buddha, "Who do you think you are?" Tell me, who can testify that you are an enlightened being? And the Buddha replied, the earth is my witness. And the Buddha touched the earth. And in one legend, it describes it in this way. The Buddha enveloped Mara and all his following with love and compassion. He was like a lion, without distress or fear, terror or weakness, without dejection, without confusion, without agitation, without dread. And with his right hand, he touched all parts of his body, and then he gently touched the earth. And as he touched the great earth, it trembled and resounded. Then the goddess of the earth spoke. It is indeed as you have declared. You are the purest of all beings. And so defeated, Mara fled. And as the Buddha remained sitting there under the Bodhi tree, he saw clearly the true nature of existence, a profound and deep seeing of conditionality, how everything is in constant flux, constant process, nothing substantial, there's nothing permanent, everything affecting everything else in the deepest sense. So just try and imagine the profound depths of what the Buddha saw, this vast vision of existence. Just try and picture that. This deep seeing is sometimes described as the watches of the night, where the Buddha is flooded with images as he sits under the Bodhi tree, and that help him to see the truth of conditionality. So in the first watch of the night, the Buddha saw how living beings go round and round, rebirth after rebirth. And the Buddha recollected his own former births, remembering thousands of lives as though living them again. And he saw the pain and suffering that he'd experienced himself. And then his compassionate mind turned towards other living beings. And he saw how they too go round and round, rebirth after rebirth, how they too experience suffering and loss. And the next night, the Buddha saw the truth of karma. He saw clearly and vividly all the skillfulness and unskillfulness in the world. And he saw the consequences of these actions. And he also saw that nothing could provide security in the mundane world. The threat of death was ever present, and that there was nothing substantial in the conditioned world to rest on. And his compassion grew further. And then on the third night, sat under the Bodhi tree, he saw how humanity wears itself out, birth and death, over and over again. He saw into the very heart of existence and how greed, hatred, and delusion fuel this going round and round. And he saw that when that delusion is extinguished like a flame, suffering ends. And through this profound seeing, the Buddha's heart was finally set free. He was enlightened. So let's just dwell in that space. Let's just try and take that in, the enormity of the Buddha's enlightenment. So this deep seeing, this vision of the true nature of existence, I think it's really hard to take in the profundity of that. It's been really on my mind recently, just the profundity of what the Buddha saw, the sort of the hugeness of it, the vast expanse of vision that the Buddha saw. So it's really hard to put it into words and describe it. And the Buddha himself had to sit for many, many weeks to absorb what had happened, what he'd realized. So again, in the legend, the Buddha is described as just sitting under the trees by the river for weeks on end. 7 days, then another 7 days, stretching into weeks, sitting there under various trees, just feeling the bliss of liberation. And it's said that every 7 days the Buddha would move silently from tree to tree. He's just incredibly still and absorbed. And I find that description, I find those passages in the Buddha's life so moving, so powerful. Because for me it just shows something of the profundity of what he'd realised, that the Buddha sort of just had to sit and absorb it. In his book, Who is the Buddha?, Sangharakshita writes of this time in the Buddha's life and says that the Buddha was allowing what he had experienced to transform and transmute every atom and fibre of his being. After all, what had happened to him was literally the most tremendous thing that can possibly happen to a human being. The transformation from an unenlightened to an enlightened being is so overwhelming. He was staggered by his own achievement. So I hope you've got a sense of the Buddha's enlightenment, of that sort of transformation he went through. And to help us to explore the Bodhicitta, I want to sort of just touch into 2 episodes from the Buddha's experience immediately after his enlightenment. So in this period of the 7 weeks after 7 weeks. So the first episode is where the Buddha is reflecting on his own realization, his own understanding of the truth, his own behavior. And that just seems, to have that reflection, to be reflecting on himself in that way, just seems to me like it's another aspect of the Buddha just absorbing what had happened. Like there's this deeply honest look at who he is and what he's achieved. And the Buddha sees that there's no one that he can see that is more accomplished in these things than him. Again, in Who is the Buddha?, Sangharakshita describes the Buddha as seeing that in terms of spiritual insight and understanding, he himself is the highest living being in the universe. Having realized for the first time who he really is, the Buddha sees that there is no one under whom he can live, paying honor and respect. He has nothing to learn, spiritually speaking, from anyone. But, and personally I find this really interesting, he still requires a focus for his devotion. So the Buddha still requires a focus for his devotion. He's enlightened. And he still requires a focus for his devotion. He still needs something to look up to. He still needs something to revere. So the story goes that what the Buddha realizes is that what he can look up to is the Dharma. He realizes that he feels reverence for the Dharma. Now, it's not the Dharma as the teachings as we talk about the Dharma. What's meant by this is the Dharma as truth or reality, the reality of conditionality itself, the reality, the conditions that can produce a Buddha, that can lead to Buddhahood. And that's what the Buddha can pay honor and respect to, the Dharma. He can worship the Dharma. So again, Sangharakshita says in Who is the Buddha? This is a really astonishing episode. It shows that even a Buddha needs, not that the enlightened mind can be literally in need of anything, to honor and respect something. Even a Buddha needs to offer worship. So worship is not just a spiritual practice to be taken up as a means to an end and then discarded once enlightenment is attained. Worship is an integral part of the enlightenment experience itself. The enlightened mind is a worshipping mind, no less than it is a realized mind or a compassionate mind. So again, the enlightened mind is a worshipping mind. I think that's quite an astonishing thing to say. What does that mean? It's not what you usually hear, is it? You hear about wisdom and compassion, in relation to enlightenment. You don't hear about worship. But Sangharakshita is saying the enlightened mind is a worshipping mind. So I've just been thinking about that since I've sort of been preparing this talk. And I mean, I can tell you I'm not enlightened. Uh, so I can only try and make sense of that statement from my experience so far. And when I was contemplating that statement, what I started to reflect on was a long solitary retreat I did a couple of years ago. And one of the strongest experiences I had on that retreat was to feel a lot of gratitude, a deep appreciation, some deep gratitude just really started to arise for me. And of course, you know, that was a lot for the people in my life, for my family and friends, and for being part of this spiritual community, this Sangha that's trying to practice the Dharma as best we can. So I had a lot of appreciation and gratitude for our Sangha and for family, friends. But I also had a lot of deep appreciation for what I've received, for the gift of the Dharma that I've received. I felt so fortunate for having come across the Dharma in this lifetime. I felt a deep sense of gratitude to the Buddha and to the Buddha for communicating what he had realized and for passing that on to others. And I felt deep gratitude for finding a teacher who's communicated the Dharma in a way that I can really relate to. And I felt a strong appreciation for the teachings and the practices that I've been given over the years. And a deep appreciation for how those teachings and practices have changed my life. So that's the nearest I could get to thinking that's what Sangharajta must mean. Like there must be an enlightened version of that or something. You know, there must be an enlightened version of that deep appreciation for what we have, what we've been given, what exists in the world. Okay, so now it's over to you. So here's an invitation, a period of reflection, and then we'll split up into pairs and just talk about what you've reflected on. So again, I invite you to just close your eyes and get comfortable. And just reflect on what it might be about the Dharma that's had the most impact upon you. What you appreciate, what you feel gratitude for, that you may even feel some respect or reverence. And I'm not meaning in this particular instance, sort of people or as a Sangha or particular groups that you feel part of, not even the atmosphere here at the Buddhist Centre, but the teachings. What is it that you've come across, encountered in terms of the Dharma as teachings that has had the most profound effect on you? It may be the teaching or teachings that have helped to lessen your experience of suffering. So what teaching has had the most profound effect on you? Okay, so if you've got a sense of that, if you're watching the live stream on YouTube, maybe you could just continue to reflect on your own. You can maybe meditate on what you've reflected on, or write in a journal, or draw an image that just helps you to keep that in mind. And here in the Lotus Hall, I invite you to split into pairs. Okay. Well, that's been useful. So yeah, I hope you've got like a bit more in touch with what feels in you in terms of the Dharma and the teachings. So I now want to explore the second episode that I want to look at in the Buddha's life, in that immediate aftermath after his enlightenment. So as I've described, the Buddha's there absorbing what's happened, sort of just weeks on weeks on end, sort of just staring at the trees and just absorbing things. And as I've just described, he's taken in what he really appreciates, what he feels deep gratitude and reverence for in terms of the Dharma. So he's had that experience, and then eventually his mind turns towards starting to communicate that to others. So my sense is he's so profoundly moved, feels, the sort of the compassion that he feels is so deep and so strong because of what he's experienced. And that he wants to sort of communicate that to others. For a moment the Buddha doubts whether people would be able to understand the truth that he'd realized. Pali Suttas, the Buddha puts it like this: this Dharma that I have attained is profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and sustainable by mere reasoning, subtle to be experienced by the wise. But this generation rejoices in attachment for such a generation to see this truth. If I were to teach the Dharma, others would not understand me. So the Buddha sat there with this doubt. And then again, the legend goes that he looked out over, and that image of the lotus pond just moves him very deeply. And through that image, the Buddha saw that living beings were similar to those lotus flowers, that human beings were just like process of growth and development. In the water, some people he knew wouldn't be able to hear the truth, that were half open or even fully open to the light. Would be some people who would be able to hear the truth that he had seen. Beautiful image. It's so tender and compassionate. I think it's striking that it's the image that as soon as you walk into the Buddhist center downstairs, on the Buddha looking out over the lotus pond, or give money to the center, all those ways of helping are in some way, some respect or acting from that image of the Buddha looking out over the lotus pond. So again, over to you, another period of reflection. So again, I invite you to just close your eyes. So you made the center already. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate anything that you do to keep this center going. So just try and absorb that appreciation. And if you can, just think about one more thing that you could do to help our center be this bodhisattva, to help our center be this bodhisattva, to help communicate the Dharma. And I'm not talking about projects, things you'd like to do in the future, and I'm not talking. And if you are feeling a block, just try and get a sense of how you might be able to work with that a bit more creatively. What might be the next step that could help to just shift something of that block. Okay. So if you're on YouTube, again, just keep reflecting on your own meditation. so I'm just going to wrap things up now. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope I've been able to communicate something of both the Buddha's experience, but also that movement in the Buddha from his enlightenment to appreciation to communicating, and that's the sort of spirit of the Bodhicitta. Hope I've also been able to communicate something of the connection between the three protectors and the Buddha. I think you could see that as like the Buddha had immense clarity. I think to be so determined to set out on the path and to sit there under the Bodhi tree and real determination and clarity. He was very clear about what he was trying to do. And of course, he brought immense energy to that. That description of the attack of Mara is just met with very skillful, enlightened energy, turning arrows into flowers, etc. And of course, it's just very clear with the Buddha's deep compassion. So I hope that helps you to connect the three protectors to the story of the Buddha. Yeah, and I hope that you can go away from here after the puja, which you'll stay for, obviously, and reflect more on that spirit in yourself. So maybe just keeping reflecting on what is it about the Dharma that you really value, and how can you help others? How can you continue to just help others? And I think it's important to just keep reflecting on the qualities of the life of the Buddha and the life story of the Buddha. I really encourage you to do that. Of trying to keep the Buddha central to what you're doing, just to trying to keep the Buddha in mind. Like I say, you might have a particular connection with other Buddha and Bodhisattva figures, that's absolutely fine. But just trying to keep that connection to that figure, or figures to the Buddha himself. And I think really good ways to get in touch more with the Buddha is, well, I'd really recommend Sangharakshita's books, like particularly Who is the Buddha? It's a fantastic book. Sangharakshita's book, the Bodhisattva Ideal, has got this brilliant first chapter, which is like the origins of the Bodhisattva Ideal, and it just talks a lot about the Buddha and the Buddha's acts of kindness and compassion as that's the origin of the Bodhisattva Ideal. But if you're of a mind to, of a temperament to, reading some of the suttas from the Pali Canon is a really good way of getting in touch with the Buddha, or just dwelling on the image of the Buddha, a really beautiful Buddha rupa like the one on the shrine here, just to sit and stare at the Buddha and just absorb the qualities that sort of radiate out. Whatever might work for you, that's maybe one thing you can just take away. Okay. So we'll have a little pause now. We'll have a 5-minute leg stretch. It'd be nice to do that in silence, I think, just to keep a particular atmosphere in the room. And then come back at 3:30 for our sevenfold puja. And I'll say more about that at the start. So as I said earlier, this might be the here today. It might not feel like it because, as I said, traditionally, if you're watching on YouTube, you find a meaningful way to engage with the puja. Say just a few words about like what the puja is trying to cultivate, really, because one of the ways to look at a sevenfold puja is that it's trying to create spiritual moods, 7 different, to help us to get more in touch with all the things that we've explored today. So the puja is a bit like a drama, really. It's like a drama of enlightenment. It's got that sort of feel to it, taking part in some sort of drama. And that drama starts with worship and salutation. So they're the first 2 stages of the puja. So I think you could imagine that of like, we've come across the Dharma, we've come across the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, we've come across the teachings, and we feel moved. We feel moved enough to worship. We feel moved enough to salute, to bow. That's what the puja is trying to help us get in touch with. You know, we want to worship, we want to salute the Buddha. We want to make offerings. So after the worship section, there's a chance to come and make offerings of tea lights to this shrine. What we're trying to enact there is this drama of like, we've been moved so much, we want to offer something. And even that we want to sing, so we chant a mantra as well. So you could see that as like, we're moved so much, we want to put voice to that. We want to sing, we want to put that into voice, into mantra. So after the worship section, I'll lead us in the Shakyamuni mantra, and if you want to, you can make offerings to the shrine. Those first 2 sections, we've moved so much that we realise we want to commit to this. And again, it's like an imaginative enacting that very strongly. It doesn't matter whether you feel things very strongly in a puja, it's more the sort of just taking part that's important. So he needs something to revere and honour and respect. So we'll do in relationship to that episode from his life. And that'll lead us into the Heart Sutra, which will in unison. And by that stage, we've built up so much positivity, at that point that we realise that we can't keep it to ourselves. So touched by what we've heard that we have to give that up to help end their suffering too. So the key, some of the puja are in the last and self-surrender. May the acting thus go of all beings, lifetime, and let it all go. You know, there's nothing for ourselves, we just let it all go. We surrender to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, so entering into mantra. We'll have the Padmasambhava mantra after transference of merit. I'll lead us in that. Mantras, which include the mantras of the 3 protectors. Chant Om Shanti immediately after the puja, to just stay as still as you can, because it's possible to just get a little glimpse, a little taste of what enlightenment is like in that silence. Okay, so I hope that makes it a bit clearer what we're doing. Makes it a bit clearer what we're doing. The best thing is just to do. We'll just settle for a minute or 2, and then when Alex is ready, he'll read a poem that Sangharakshita wrote in 1953, I think. Yeah, 1953, in the Buddha. And I know that they're chanting this poem in India at the Order Convention at Bodh Gaya. As we speak, we can imagine that. So, yeah. Muni, Muni, Mahamuni, Shakyamuni, Shakyamuni, Swaha. Om Muni, Muni, Mahamuni, Shakyamuni, Swaha. Shakyamuni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni 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 Shakyamuni Swaha. Salutation. As many atoms as there are, in the 1,000,000,000 worlds, so many times I make reverent salutation. To all the Buddhas of the 3 eras, to the Siddharma, and to the excellent community. I pay homage to all the shrines and places in which the Bodhisattvas have been. I make profound obeisance to the teachers and those to whom respectful salutation is due. Going for refuge. This very day, I go for my refuge. To the powerful protectors, whose purpose is to guard the universe. The mighty conquerors who overcome suffering everywhere. Wholeheartedly also I take my refuge. In the Dharma they have ascertained, which is the abode of security against the rounds of rebirth. Likewise in the host of Bodhisattvas, I take my refuge. The refuges and precepts in call and response. Namo tassa. Bhagavatu arahatu. Samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa. Bhagavatu arahatu. Samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa. Bhagavatu arahatu. Samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi. Sanghāṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dvacampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Champi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Champi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Champi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Champi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Champi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Panatipata Vajrapani Sikkhapadam Samadhyami Adinadana Vajrapani Sikkhapadam Samadhyami Kamesu Michachara Vajrapani Sikkhapadam Samadhyami Musavada Vajrapani Sikkhapadam Samadhyami Suramariya Maja Pamadatana Vajrapani Sikkhapadam Samadhyami Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu. With deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body. With open-handed generosity, I purify my body. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I purify my body. With truthful communication, I purify my speech. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. Confession of faults. The evil that I have heaped up through my ignorance and foolishness. Evil in the world of everyday experience, as well as evil in understanding and intelligence. All that I acknowledge to the protectors. Standing before them, with hands raised in reverence, and terrified of suffering, I pay salutations again and again. May the leaders receive this kindly, just as it is with its many faults. What is not good, O protectors, I shall not do again. Rejoicing in merit, I rejoice with delight in the good done by all beings, through which they obtain rest, with the end of suffering. May those who have suffered be happy. I rejoice in the release of beings from the sufferings of the rounds of existence. I rejoice in the nature of the Bodhisattva and the Buddha, who are protectors. I rejoice in the arising of the Bodhicitta and the teaching, those oceans that bring happiness to all beings and are the abode of welfare of all beings. Entreaty and supplication. Saluting them with folded hands. I entreat the Buddhas in all the quarters. May they make shine the lamp of the Dharma. For those wandering in the suffering of delusion. With hands folded in reverence. I implore the conquerors desiring to enter nirvana. May they remain here for endless ages. So that life in this world does not grow dark.
Thus I have heard. On one occasion, just after he became fully awakened, the Blessed One was living on a riverbank at the root of a goat herd's banyan. Now the following thought arose in the Blessed One, in the mind of the Blessed One, while solitary and secluded. Those who are without reverence and respect live unsatisfactorily. So why should I not live in dependence on some ascetic or Brahmin, honouring and revering them? Then it occurred to the Blessed One, I should live in dependence on some other ascetic or Brahmin, honouring and revering them. For the sake of fulfillment, an unfulfilled part of virtuous conduct. But I do not see in this world, with its devas, its maras, its Brahmins, its populace of ascetics and Brahmins, of gods and human beings, and any other ascetic or Brahmin, as perfect in virtuous conduct as myself, whom honouring and revering I might live in dependence on. I should live in dependence on some other ascetic or Brahmin, honouring and revering them, for the sake of fulfillment of an unfulfilled part of meditative concentration, of understanding, of liberation, of knowledge and vision of liberation. But I do not see in this world, with its devas, its maras, its brahmas, its populace of ascetics and Brahmins, of gods and human beings, of any other ascetic or Brahmin as perfect in knowledge and vision of liberation as myself, whom honouring and revering might I live in dependence on. Why don't I live respecting and revering in that very Dharma, dependent on which I was completely and perfectly awakened? Then, having read the Blessed One's mind, Brahma Sahampati, like a strong man extending his bent arm or bending his straightened arm, disappeared in the Brahma world and appeared in front of the Blessed One. Then Brahma Sahampati arranged his outer robe on one shoulder, bowed with joined hands towards the Blessed One, and then said, "Exactly so, Blessed One. Exactly so, Perfect One. Lord, the worthy ones of the past, completely and perfectly awakened ones, lived respecting and revering that very Dharma on which they were dependent. Lord, the worthy ones of the future, completely and perfectly awakened ones, will live respecting and revering that very Dharma on which they will be dependent. Right now, Lord, the Blessed One, who is worthy one, completely and perfectly awakened, lives respecting and revering that very Dharma on which you are dependent." Brahma Sahampati said this. Having spoken, he further said this: "Those Buddhas of the past, those Buddhas yet to come, those Buddhas now alive, who dispel the grief of many, they lived, they live, and they will live, all revering the true Dharma. This is natural for Buddhas. Therefore, those who want the good, who aspire for greatness, recollecting the Buddha's teachings, should revere in the true Dharma."
The Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all five skandhas and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. Feeling, thought, and choice, consciousness itself, are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought, or choice, nor is there consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even act of sensing. No ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance. No withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cause of pain, or cease in pain, or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the Pranya Paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe it's true. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhiswaha. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhiswaha. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhiswaha. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained in my acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. My personality throughout my existences. My possessions. And my merit in all three ways. I give up without regard to myself. For the benefit of all beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the infinite number of beings inhabiting limitless space. So may I become that which maintains all beings, situated throughout space, so long as all have not attained to peace. Om Aham Vajraguru Padmasiri Hum. 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 Om Aham Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Om. Aham Vajraguru Padma Siddhi. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Arapachanadi. Om Arapachanadi. Om Arapachanadi. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Vajrapani Hum. Om Tare. Tutare. Ture. Swaha. Om Tare. Tutare. Ture. Swaha. Om Tare. Tutare. Ture. Swaha. Om Amidevari. Om Amidevari. Om Amidevari. Om Muni Muni. Mahamuni. Shakyamuni. Swaha. Om Muni Muni. Mahamuni. Shakyamuni. Swaha. Om Muni Muni. Mahamuni. Shakyamuni. Swaha. Om Ahom. Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hom. Om Ahom. Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hom. Om Ahom. Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hom. Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha